We're going live, and it's the miracle of live streaming. We're streaming. Yes, we are live. I've got a little confusing message, but we are. How are you, Will?
Hey, doing well, Steve. How are you today, my friend?
I'm perfect, working with a little technology. Hey, I'm excited about today's show, and I'm going to run a little intro here like I know what I'm doing. All right. It's the Mindstate Marketing Hour with Will Leach, our favorite scientist. He wears a leather jacket, not a lab coat. Today's topic: harness the magic of storytelling to build a stronger business with Will Leach. Welcome to your show, Will Leach.
Hey, it's good to be back on my show. It's been a whole week since the last show. How are you? How have you been?
Excellent. Been busy. Actually, did a presentation on this topic yesterday a little bit, so I'm looking forward to this. This is something that I really enjoy.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
We got a little music going here. I'm going to turn it down so we can concentrate on this topic. So what's the backstory, Will Leach? Why did this pop into your little head?
Yeah, if you probably did realize that our friend, not maybe my friend, but certainly your friend, Donald Miller, who wrote a book called Building a Story Brand, came out with a new book, which is called How to Grow Your Small Business. And I was just reading it because I just read so many books. And in it, he talked about storytelling as usual and the idea of marketing. And, we have talked about storytelling many times on the show about the importance of narrative psychology. But it really got me to thinking about how do we think of ourselves in terms of businesses? How should we think about storytelling to grow our businesses, to craft compelling messages? And storytelling can be confusing. And sometimes it can feel intimidating. What I wanted to do today was really talk about storytelling and how it's evolved and how you can evolve with it to craft much more compelling messaging, but even better business strategies using the power of story. So the book got me into thinking about it. I spent a couple of hours really trying to map all this stuff together, and hopefully you guys will find some great value coming out of the show.
Every time this topic comes up, people are fascinated with it. And it's so true. Our brains, I like to say our brains were designed a long time ago. They're still brain 1.0. Okay. Hasn't been an update. So what does that mean? That means that honoring the rules of story worked way back when, and honoring the rules of story work now, and it'll work in the future. And that's very powerful that you get your content dialed in, because the reason you and I are talking is because of your book.
That's right.
Okay, Marketing Mindstates. When I read this book, I was very familiar with Donald Miller's book, Building a Story Brand. And basically, Donald's book convinces you, hey, the difference between music and noise is music follows rules. But so if your content follows rules, then it connects with the brain and it's not noise, right? And so that's awesome to figure out the rules of story and start to plan and assemble your content that way. But then when I read your book, then it helped me to go from writing a one-size-fits-all message, honoring the rules of story, to writing and dialing in a more clear message for my target audience, assuming I understand them.
Yep.
And so that's where this whole journey began a long time ago with you, Will Leach.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. And let's get right into storytelling, because it's an important part of the human experience, And so, first thing is I want to make sure we all remind ourselves just what you did, actually. It's that we all live in our own story. So storytelling is very important for your brand success. So just like you said, actually, right, Steve, it's that our stories helped us survive 3,000 years ago. I mean, it just started like where we were surviving and flourish, I could argue, as a species. I mean, our stories was our form of education for, the large majority of our existence, right? We were educated by the stories that our elders told us, and then those stories were passed on and passed on. And those stories weren't just for entertainment. They were giving us rules so we could, kind of flourish in life. They told us that when you see the saber-toothed tiger, over there by near the cave, run in the cave, get away from the saber-toothed tiger, right? So, it's really still, like you said, still very important today because that brain 1.0 that you just said, Steve, it allows us stories to make sense of the world that we live in. So remember in ancient times, if we're sitting there and we have all these fires and we feel warm in our houses and a major storm comes through and all of our houses fall, or that the fires get extinguished, we thought the gods were angry. That was the story. Well, now when the hurricane comes through, the wind comes and tears down homes, we say, well, we have a poor power plant infrastructure, or there's global warming, but there's still story. We still think through stories and how are these things happening to us, where before maybe the gods are angry. Now it's that we need to invest more in our infrastructure, or we need to limit climate change, or whatever. These are the stories. And the reason why we do it as a species is if we didn't follow stories in our heads, we would be so overwhelmed with fear in the world. So we're always, always, always observing our existence through the story that we tell ourselves. And just like you said, Steve, there has been a lot of work in storytelling, and there's natural structures in all stories that started thousands of years ago. But then, if you're thinking right now, you think, okay, great, this is interesting stuff, but why do I care as a brand? Here's why. Because if you're a brand, if you're a company, if you're a service provider, you are helping your customers along their story. That's your purpose. Your purpose is to make sure that your customers realize that when they are in their story and they have a barrier, that they can count on your brand to help them get through that barrier. That's the reason why you want to use storytelling.
Yeah, so I think the number one thing from that Donna Miller book is that, most of the time we position ourselves as the hero of our story when we're a company or a brand. And to realize that you're actually in your client or your prospect's mind, they're the hero of the story. And your brand needs to position itself to support that hero through their challenge that happens to include maybe a solution that your brand offers.
Yeah, in my book, I talk about these 21 kind of natural triggers or decision shortcuts that we make. One of them is called egocentric bias. And here's what egocentric bias, it's exactly what you'd expect it to mean. It means that we are all self-centered and we believe that we are the heroes of our stories. We're the reasons why things happen, good and bad. So just like you said, if you're not talking about your customer being the hero, then you are eliminating their ability to see themselves in the egocentric form. So that's building a self-identity. That's one of the biggest things in behavioral psychology is focus on your customer so they can feel that they have the power, and that's egocentric bias.
So we all live in our own story, and so storytelling is very important for your brand success.
Mhm.
How are we using Mindstate Marketing to help us connect the dots there?
Yeah. So, what I want to do is think first through. I think there's a natural progression of using story in your business. And what I would suggest is, the important part of this world is to think about their stories through the lens of your customers and this evolution. So first, let's think about structure, then we'll talk about strategy, and then we'll talk about application. So first off, there's structure of story. So there's a guy by the name of Joseph Campbell, I think in 1959 or so, maybe 1960. He wrote a really famous book. It's been popularized it's called The Hero's Journey. You may have heard about this thing called The Hero's Journey. Here's what this guy did. He went and he studied myths and legends throughout the world, throughout time. And basically through all this study, he basically found out that there are 12 steps that almost every major myth, legend, story has that's gone throughout the course of history, right? So these 12 steps. He brings it all into like three different structures, or I guess three different stages. But really, what they come down to is you'll recognize this from maybe The Hobbit or a whole bunch of different stories, right? There's a character that leaves, he lives a normal life, but then he's called on to an adventure. Then that character will face a challenge of some kind. They'll learn something. They will have to overcome a fear or maybe an enemy of some kind. And then lastly, they'll return changed and have some wisdom. So there now in Joseph Campbell's work, there are 12 steps, but these steps in order create everything you need to create an amazing fictional tale, because our brains respond to this order. So he came up with this idea. And what I think he did was help us build structure around a story. So if you can incorporate your brand into the structure that he lays out, it's going to feel more intuitive. It's going to feel more natural. It's going to feel part of your life. So what he did on the hero's journey was really help us create structure.
Yeah, I haven't done this before, but I wanted to share kind of a graphic that demonstrates that exact structure.
Oh, cool.
So hang with me here and let's figure this out. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
All
This is
right,
great.
so we have Woody right here, and over here is Woody in this status quo. We meet our hero. This is his life, and then all of a sudden he learns something that uh, upsets his life. That status quo won't remain, and so he's going to resist this call to action. And then as he sinks into that journey, he's going to become discouraged and go through all these challenges that really upset him and challenge him and make him feel insecure and maybe not capable of overcoming this event that has presented itself. And yet at some point they meet someone that or read a book or hear a voice or whatever, that guide
Mhm.
that helps them become determined, and then they go through that process of applying that knowledge, ups and downs, and finally overcomes it and returns back with that wisdom that you're
Yeah.
talking about. And when we think about our services or our products that we offer our clients, we're generally meeting them somewhere in this part of their journey.
That's right. Where there's an issue, a problem. That's right.
Hmm.
Yep. And you help them overcome these barriers. That's right.
Yeah. So by let's see if I can come back. I did it without killing our stream. How about that? So, so by understanding and knowing your audience and through the lens of their story structure,
Mhm.
then I think that applying the right messaging at that point can be so impactful.
Amen. I love it. So, what we just went through, and you just showed it again, it happens in every major. I mean, I could have done this. I could have done the same graphic with Bilbo Baggins. I could have done it through Harry Potter. I could have done it through Cinderella. There's always the same structure. The most important stories, memorable stories of all time follow that structure. But now you may be thinking, okay, great. So I believe that it's important to integrate my brand into the structure. So how do I do that? Now we came into Donald Miller's book, Building a Story Brand. Now there are other people who did very similar books. I think what Donald Miller did is he simplified this hero's journey. And what he did was he said, okay, so how do we bring business along? How do we think about business? And what he did was he said that there are 7 steps, not 12. There are 7 steps. And really what you're trying to do is, one, be very clear and what your brand does for your customers, and then also how the customer will benefit. So he said, okay, so not only is there a structure, but there is a strategy. Meaning, like, I went through his course, and you did too, and you help companies do this all the time, right, Steve? Is that you say, okay, if we're going to design a website, there is actually a strategy to follow, and there are these 7 steps to do in order. And if you do these things in order, it will fulfill the needs of a story. So, the 7 steps better than I will. I'll paraphrase them, right? Your customer wants something, but they have a problem. So they're going to meet you. You're going to provide them a plan. You're going to ask them to take action on that plan. And if they do, they will either avoid failure and or achieve a success.
Hmm.
And so the idea was, when I read it, was that, okay, not only is there a structure, but there's this order, there's a strategy. And so if I was to build a website, the first thing I would do is make sure you understood at the very top of that website what I do for your customer, not who I am. I'm 100 years in business, nothing about me, but here's what I do for my customer. And then I go right down I go right through that process. My customer has a want of some kind. They have this problem, but then they're going to hopefully meet me. When they meet me, I'm going to give them a plan. If they take action on the plan, it's going to lead them to success and avoid failure. And if you do that in your sales materials, if you do that in your website, you do that in your sales calls, you will build this narrative that people need to hear to feel more safe with you. So please, like, ad lib on that a bit, because I know, like you said, you know this much better than even I do.
Yeah, so that the word feel is the important thing right there because in the- when they want something, there's and they for example, let's say they come to you and they know that their messaging is falling short and they're grasping for things to get a competitive advantage or make an improvement. But what that makes them feel
Mhm.
inside as I'm I'm tasked, I'm hired, I'm paid a salary, I'm tasked to do this, and yet inside I know maybe there's people that do it better, and I'm supposed to come back with a plan. That makes me feel insecure. That makes me feel vulnerable, and it makes me feel like I could fail.
Mhm.
Okay. But then when I run into someone like you and I'm going, well, Will Leach has convinced me he knows this, but more importantly, what gives me confidence, he's got a process. If we do step one, step two, and step three, then I see how I can go from the transformation is the important part of that thing as well.
Yeah.
I'm moving from insecure, not sure I could fail, to I see a path to my aspirational image as successful. I did my job as I was supposed to. I implemented something. Now the team is happy with it. We made an improvement. That's the transformation that you're implementing. And so understanding that insecurity part and your plan resolves that insecurity, that's the most important thing. How they feel about your solution is important. Everyone's going, "Oh, I can change your messaging." Everyone's saying that. That's the external challenge. I need to change my messaging. But the internal challenge,
Mhm.
your messaging, your solution needs to convince them that they're going to resolve those internal things.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So what I love about what he did and what he's done is he has brought a way for the everyday brand, the everyday person to bring story to grow their business. It's very business centric, right? Where if you think about the hero's journey, that had nothing to do with business. He was just looking at it as a cultural anthropologist and built structure. And this is how great stories are told. So, and the idea was always how the hero changes and grows through the adventure. That was the structure. Like, you're always focused on the hero and how are they changing across this kind of adventure they're having. Donald Miller says, no, let's flip that on its side. How does the customer benefit from the brand
Mhm.
using story? So you have structure and then you have strategy, but then I think there's another there's another evolution, which would be application. So where Hero's Journey is about structure, Donald Miller is about strategy. I think about Mind States very much through the lens of application. And so what I did with my book was, and I didn't even know that Story Brand was out at the time, or wasn't out at the time when I wrote my book. But the idea was that I will simplify this into 4 different steps. And these 4 different steps will tell you, how do I tell my customer that what I can do for them in the most compelling way possible. So where I'm trying to get into the actual application using behavioral psychology. And so, you know, where it's very important for us to have a clear story, you got to realize, guys, that there are the words, the way that you talk to somebody, the actual words and the phrases you use, the visuals you use can make your story more compelling. So the way I used to think about it, I wrote this article years ago. The way I used to think about it was your customer is on a journey. Your customer has a need. In my world, that's called a goal. Like, that is part one of my model. I have to understand their goal. After that, what's more important, I think, is then saying, okay, what is their desire to reach their goal? And this is where I think my stuff really helps, like, make Donald Miller's work so much more impactful. Because what it does, it says, well, there are these 9 motivations that the person, or these 9 feelings that the person is trying to feel. So, what if we understood that along the journey, the hero, your customer, wants to feel successful? That's a very different story than if I want to say the hero wants to feel loved, or the hero wants to feel that they belong, or if the hero wants to feel smart. So, if we understand the motivation, I can tailor that story so that I now know, for instance, if I know that my customer wants to feel successful, I can tailor my story to show how, by using my brand, they will become more successful, more powerful, more richer, etc. If it was around nurturance, I would talk about how my brand can help them feel more loved, more cared for, etc. So what I wanted to try to do with my work, and behavioral psychology does a great job at this, is helping us get into the brass tacks of how to use the words so that it fits within the strategy and the overlying structure of all stories.
Yeah, I think that was a big thing for me is when I realized that the folks that I work with, that they're in all sorts of states of mind, but when they're considering hiring an agency to help them get their act together online, they're in this what's a cautious achievement mind state.
Yeah.
That was very apparent to me. And what does that mean? It means that I'm an entrepreneur. I'm going to do it regardless. But how nice would it be if I could have someone with a plan that helped me avoid the costly mistakes I know I'm going to make if I have to figure it out myself?
Yep. Yep.
That really, I've had people. Just the other day, I had a lady says, "Yeah, your website makes me feel understood.
Mhm. I
It
love that.
really connects with me." And that's because of the mind state application on top of the story brand
Yep.
framework.
And what's interesting, and as you're talking, it dawned on me. So if you're a writer, you may know the structure of a story, and you may even know the strategy. You want to tell a story in this thing, but are you going to tell a love story, an adventure story, a rags to riches? Like that's what Mindstates does, right? It allows you to bring your story down to where your reader, whoever that reader is, really can identify with that story. And I think without that, you're still leaving up to chance. The words you use, the way you set up the story are still left up to chance. So that's why it's so important for you to understand the motivations in particular of your customer.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think Donna Miller's book helped all of us marketers actually acknowledge your prospects have feelings.
Yeah, really.
Okay,
Isn't that
and,
ridiculous that
and that,
it was like, 2018 for us to believe that, for
yeah,
somebody else to write it and say, yeah, you know what? They have feelings too. Yeah, I know.
yeah, and then your book goes, yeah, but what feelings are they in the
What
moment that
feelings?
they're considering your solution? What feelings do they need to have resolved?
That's right. So you
Because
don't want
there's
to tell a love story if their feelings are around success. You just don't
right,
want to do that, right? It won't
no.
ever. It's an interesting feeling. It's just not the right feeling. I love it.
So when if we think about certain services out there, Will's like the story behind a bank, a
Mhm.
bank that's giving home loans. What would the story be? What would be the state of mind that someone would be considering?
Yeah, I mean, there's it's one or two things, right? I think if you're the bank, or if you are going to use the bank, you want to tell the bank's position as secure and safe, especially in today's world, right, where banks are shutting down. Right now, if I was a bank, I would make sure you knew that I am a secure bank that is not going to lose your deposits. I have plenty of money for everybody to use, right? I would be telling my story through the lens of what we call cautious security. But if I was going to talk to people who want to buy a home, in almost all cases, I would be thinking through the lens of probably this idea of called optimistic nurturance, meaning I want to provide greater care for my family. Like that's many people want to do that, or there are some people that when they're upgrading their home, they're looking at success. The home is a signal of success, which is optimistic achievement. So that's the important. So when I'm talking to my customers, I would be talking about, hey, you are successful, and is now your time to get the home of your dreams. Count on us as your safe, reliable lender that will not let you down, so you can achieve the success that you deserve.
Hmm.
That's what I would be doing. That would be my story. The guide, which is me, I'm safe, I'm secure, I know what I've been doing for a long, long time. You are the person who's successful. You deserve the house of your dreams.
Yeah, and we work with successful people like you all the time. And here's our successful people plan,
Yeah,
right?
that's
And
right. I work with lots of successful people. You can count on me to be able to deliver when you need me most.
excuse me. So you have use slice of life with the C in here. So
Yeah. So the idea here was, what I wanted to make sure, was that, there is a natural evolution that you should be thinking about as it relates to bringing your brand and growing your brand using story. You have to follow a structure, you have to follow a strategy, and then you have to actually follow the application. If you do that, you're going to get to a place where you can bring people into your story, you can grow your brand or business. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, well, okay, what does that look like in an advertisement? There are two easy ways to do this. If you want to bring, and they're so not complex at all, it's so super easy. and probably you've been doing this in your past. You just didn't realize that you were actually bringing people into a story. First way you could do this is call it a slice of life. And that's not that's not a slide of life, it's a slice of life. So use it with a C. Here's the idea is that if you show a story and you cut out to a person's life, a slice of their day, and you show an ad how the brand fits in that day, you're going to easily incorporate your ad or your brand into their story. So the way it works is usually a slice of life is something like this. There's an encounter of some kind, right? Where the ad introduces the characters and situation. I'm in my kitchen, I need to do the dishes, right? So there's this very quick 30-second ad, characters in the kitchen, needs to do dishes. Then there's a problem. The ad is going to show that there's a challenge or an obstacle that the character faces. Oh, look at this pot. It's so full of gross, sticky on goo. That's a problem. Then there's this interaction where that character is going to use your product to get rid of all those stains and all that grunk, that's in the bottom of a pan. So that's going to be some kind of a detergent maybe. And then there's a solution. They lift up the pan and ding, it looks beautifully clean. When you do that, you're telling the story that many people can relate to. I just cooked a meal. It's gross pan. I need a quick solution and it works. That's a slice of life. If you show little, vignettes of somebody's life and how you incorporate into that, then it brings you naturally into that world. So next time they have that problem, you will come to mind. So slice of life is very, very common to use. And the other one is testimonials. So every time you use a testimonial, I know it's important. You guys are thinking about social proof, and by telling people that other people, by telling your customers that other people rely on us, that's a great form of social proof. And I don't disagree. But really, what a testimonial is, it is an easy way to bring your brand into somebody's own story, and you cut through all the middlemen, and all you do is have people say, "Here's my problem, and I really trust the solution now. I really trust this brand." It tells an entire story with only 2 or 3 sentences oftentimes, because it gets rid of all the stuff that maybe not be so important and just says, I had a problem, this solution worked. So it gets right to the kind of the core of any good story. So testimonials and slice of life are commonly used to really bring your brand into a story.
The slice of life is you're helping the person observing that feel they have an aspirational outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And when they're watching someone have that outcome, they're feeling that's what I want.
Mm-hmm.
I felt that way, and that's what I want to feel. So that's an aspirational. You're helping them envision them in a transformation.
Yep.
I saw a thing yesterday. I thought it was really good. I don't have it pulled up, but it was a center that works with soldiers that return back to normal life. And I just watched it on LinkedIn, and it was muted, but it didn't matter. It showed him, the soldier, in all of his gear with his family on a couch. And the family is having family time, watching TV or whatever it was they were experiencing together, but he's in his gear.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next scene, he's in his gear again at a picnic. And it's really was illustrating that he's still carrying these things from.
Oh, I love it.
Right.
Yep.
And he's just like present, but he's not present with his family.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, it showed him like they're out in the stream swimming, and he wants to go out to them, but he's sinking because of all his gear.
Mm-hmm.
And then it flashed to him walking to folks in this center that understand him, and they're taking off his gear.
That's powerful.
And he's floating back up and joins his family.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
Oh, it's real powerful. I think the best part of and that's a hell of a story. I think whoever did that ad is just really, really good. What I loved about it was that you said you didn't even have to see the words to understand, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's powerful story, right? Remember before, the movies had sound, right? You had to tell everything just through visuals. And that's why Charlie Chaplin was an amazing, I just read something that when he finally won, he didn't even win an Oscar for his work. And it wasn't posthumous, but it was, I think, a lifetime achievement Oscar or something like that. And he got a 12-minute standing ovation. the longest in Oscars history, 12-minute standing ovation. Why? Because he had to tell stories without one of the senses. You couldn't hear those stories back then, right? So in fact, what I do when I train people in our master class how to audit their commercials or audit any kind of digital ads, what I do is first I say, I want you to turn off the sound. There's no sound, and you have to visually do an audit just on the visuals, which reminded me of what you just said. And then you're looking at it through only that sense. And then there are going to be some things you pick up that you're doing well and things that you aren't doing well. Then I actually say, great, now I want you to close your eyes and listen, because that has its own senses. It has its own story, the words you're using and the sounds and things like that. And then the third way you do it, you write down all those observations. The third way you do both together. And what you'll find sometimes is that you're over relying on sound and your visuals don't match up, or maybe sometimes vice versa, which may be okay, but I want you to be aware of that so that you can't rely on both sound and visuals and sight anymore. You can't do that because people listen or they watch videos all the time like you do with the sound off. Mm-hmm. So what I love about that, though, is that they should perform on both levels, the visual as well as just, the words and the music you're using in the background.
Yeah, I've thought about that. Folks should watch their ads with the mute on. And you think about Charlie Chaplin. If you take one of his silent movies and you put a crowd, a multilingual international crowd, they'll all laugh at the same time. They'll all be moved at the same time because there's the elements of story being applied and it's connecting with everyone's brain. And it's
great
so
summary. That's a great summary of what we just talked about, right? Is that you can have people from different cultures, different backgrounds, but the story structure basically stays the same. Yeah, there could be a nuance that maybe some culture doesn't recognize, but if you stick with the structures of these stories that we've just talked about, it's going to resonate on all levels, all social, economic, demographic, every level. Why? Because we're talking about the human brain. We're talking about human beings, not subcultures. Yeah. I love that, Steve.
Time to dance. All right, so let's put the rubber to the road here. What are some common mistakes to avoid in storytelling focused ads?
Yeah, so I first got into storytelling ads was my days in PepsiCo. There are two things that we learned, not because we did it, but when we're going through this world of really understanding how brands connect at a story level. The first thing is you do not want to tell lies in your story, right? And what I may mean by that is maybe you're over exaggerating the importance that you have in the story, or you're omitting a key fact or key issue. Yeah, I can help you with your I'm a medication that can help you with your allergies, but I also can make you grow a third leg or whatever, right? That the stuff happens all the time. So we omit the bad. So don't lie. Do not lie in your stories because you may get away with it at first. It's kind of like the same thing you and I talk about in terms of, could we scare people into buying our products? We can. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. It's done all the time. But you probably only get to do that one time. And after that, so your brand will tank. Same thing with telling lies. And the other one that comes to mind was telling useless stories. We actually just talked about that, where if I'm telling a love story, but my customer wants success, then that's not meaningful to them. So if you're going to go through all the work of bringing people into story, then be sure that it's telling a good story, not a useless story. So that's a common mistake, is that you're telling your story, or it's a useless story that makes no impact on the person who's watching your video or reading your ads.
Yeah, so cool. Yeah, I was just thinking of the couple arguing over what to watch. I want to watch a romantic comedy. No, I want to watch Saving Private Ryan. The two people wanting two experiences there.
Mm-hmm. You better know which experience is best for your customer, or you're just going to be, the wife on the couch, lady on the couch, watching Saving Private Ryan and hating every bit of it. So don't be that. Don't make your customers watch Saving Private Ryan when they want, When Harry Met Sally.
That's perfect. So another great episode of the Mindstate Marketing Hour, how you can use science to connect to clients. It's just a human understanding model, plain and simple. It's all based around Will's book, Marketing the Mind States. Will, how's that And what I really amazes me how your book just continues to sell and sell and sell.
It does. Well, maybe it's because we're used some of these elements of story in it as well. If it's been story's been a part of 3,000 years of our existence, maybe the next 3,000 people will use my book. Maybe we'll see.
We'll
We'll
see.
see.
So let's say I'm an agency. Maybe I'm a freelancer. I'm someone that works with clients, and I'm wanting to up level my content. Um, how can you help me?
Yep. Hey guys, I teach this structure that we're talking about in my masterclass. So I offer a masterclass where it'll allow you on your own to take my masterclass kind of symposium where you will learn basically the narrative psychology behind your customers, but more importantly, what to say to people. So it's a couple of hours worth of material that you can start applying directly to your business today. So you've got to mindstategroup.com and look up the masterclass. You'll learn a lot more about it.
That's right. And if you don't have Will's book, just go get it. It's a good read. I really enjoyed it. It really made a lot of sense to me. It was the right book at the right time. But if you haven't read his book, your content that you're producing is a one size fits all, like we've been talking about. This helps you not be the one size fits all content. It's, I can tell when you have new folks writing content, and I can tell people who's been writing content for a while, and it's a big difference. And they're honoring these states of mind in their stuff. All right. Well, what's next? We're just rolling out.
Yeah, I think so. I think we had a good discussion today.
Yeah. All right, folks. We'll see you next week on the Mindstate Marketing Hour. I'm looking for our outro. And that's the overlay. One of these days, Will, I'm going to learn how to drive this. Did you know we're a podcast? You can listen to this on all the podcast channels, your favorite, specifically the Mindstate Marketing Hour. And also you can subscribe to the Mindstate channel on YouTube. Subscribe, tell your friends and neighbors, and you can be a content producer writing content that really resonates with the folks that you want to serve. All right, Will, we're going out. You going to sing with me?
I'm gonna watch